Hey YouTube, for this video we're going to tear down this television. This is a Philips flat screen TV, specifically a 32PF7320A/37, and this TV does have issues, but we're not going to try and repair it. If I turn on the TV here, you will see what the problem is with this TV. So when it comes up here, there we go. So right there in the center of the screen, you can see a spider crack pattern. So basically there was a physical impact on the screen, and you could try and repair this, but you'd have to replace the entire panel, and the parts are going to cost more than just buying a new TV. So we'll use this as a teardown. We'll look on the inside, we'll see how to take it apart. We'll see what kind of quality components Philips used on the inside, and just what the overall construction looks like. Let's get started. So I've got the TV laying face down here, so we can look at the back and see how to disassemble it. Before I get to the disassembly, just kind of go through everything on here. So there's a pair of HDMI connectors and the coax for the TV tuner, and then multiple connectors, S-video, composite, all that good stuff on the side here, even a USB port. Just the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is this TV actually has a cable card slot on it, which very few TVs have. That was some interesting technology that would allow you to watch digital TV without actually having to have a cable box. It's my understanding not all cable providers supported this, and I believe this standard's actually kind of going away now, but this must have been a higher end model when it was produced to actually have that on there. That's kind of rare. As far as disassembly goes, so it looks like we've got some screws here for the stand. Take those out and that stand should come off, and then around the edge there's just a bunch of screws to take out. Now what's interesting is, I don't know if it'll show up, but that's a Torx screw. So you're going to need a Torx, a T10 bit to get that open. I don't know why Philips felt the need to use Torx here. A lot of people consider them to be security screws. They're not, but not many people have them, so that makes working on them difficult for the average person. But yeah, so we'll just go through, remove screws around the outside edge, and we'll get the back panel off. Well, with the back cover off, here's what the inside of the TV looks like. It's definitely a lot busier in here than a modern TV. There's just the number of wires going everywhere, the sheer number of boards. There's yet another board under here I haven't gotten to yet, but just a number of surprises I've run into along the way. So first off, we'll start off, power comes in here, so this board here is the power board. Does the one that generates all the different voltages the television needs. So you got some coils and the reserve capacitors. So they used an HRC fuse here. That's good. Here's another glass fuse. But one of the things I noticed on this power supply, every capacitor on here is Rubicon, which is a good top quality brand. Usually TV manufacturers use cheap capacitors, and that's usually the problem with the TV. The capacitors fail, but every capacitor on here is Rubicon. Over here, every capacitor is Rubicon except for a couple of these blue ones. I haven't been able to make out the mark on those. They're a different brand, so I don't know if they're cheap or not, but Philips did not spare expense on the capacitors, so good for them. I also noticed this monitor has really good thermal on all the components that attach to heat, so that you can see this board here just does a really good job of standing off of the circuit board, and then the items that are attached to it are clipped on, so really good thermal management. Up here we've got a couple of big heat sinks here, and even over here on this board, the items that are thermally managed. I mean, they went to the trouble of doing these 45-degree angle brackets here to mount items onto for thermal management. So they went above and beyond on this TV. That's definitely you know, good for them. One thing I noticed that just really shocked me, made in Belgium. When was the last time you heard of a piece of electronics made in Belgium? Now, I actually wondered, you know, like maybe just this metal frame was made in Belgium. But if you come over here and look at the back panel of the TV, made in Belgium. So I would not have guessed in a million years that, you know, Belgium would make electronics like this, but apparently this one was made there. I also noticed, so you've got a USB cable coming over here. You can actually pull it out. So USB, so this is probably just straight through to the USB service port here on the side. So that just runs straight through into whatever this board is in here that I'll have to dig out yet. Another thing I noticed, literally there is not a single screw on here so far that is not Torx. Everything is Torx size T10. Every single screw. I mean, there is nothing on here that is Phillips or standard. Everything is Torx. So I kind of like that. Torx screws are designed so that you can't strip them, or it's significantly harder to strip them. There's nothing worse than having a Phillips screw and you go through and you try and remove it and it strips the head out and then you can't get it out. But Torx is designed to not allow that to happen. So anyway, let's get some more of these shields off and have a deeper look at the TV. This TV has to have more wires in it than I have seen in any TV before. But once you get all those wires out, it actually seems relatively clean and easy to see everything. So I got the shield off around this is obviously the main video processing board. It's the RF input here to decode TV signal. And just all around, just a really nice high quality board. So thermal pads here to heat sink. These are obviously going to be the two video chips for the video processing. You know, they definitely took thermal management seriously. Custom Phillips chip there. I did notice we have an ATI video chip up here. But even RF shielding around the coax here. I mean, they went all out. I do have to say, these are, I can't describe them, and they feel like they're still wet, very sticky. They're heavy. They're not like a thin foam. I've never seen this type of thermal management pad before, but kind of sticky and nasty. But anyway, some other things I was noticing. So once I got all the wires out of the way, I was able to see, I mean, they took the time to solder in a wire here on the board and run it over for an additional grounding point here. I mean, you know, the board itself is going to be thoroughly grounded elsewhere, but, you know, they took the time to do that. Cable ties everywhere to hold down the cables, which there were a ton of them. So, yeah, I mean, they went all out on this board. But I think, I don't know, I mean, just you got the power board here. I don't even know what this board is. Here's the video processing. Here's all the inputs. And that's still not everything. I mean, over here, you're going to have the inverter board, most likely under here. Here's the T-Con board, timing controller board. You've got boards over here for the controls and the remote control input and everything. So, yeah, I mean, they've definitely simplified newer TVs. Doesn't mean this one was a bad TV. So far from what I'm seeing, it's a pretty good TV. After getting all the screws out and getting the top panel off, we're getting closer to the actual panel itself. And if you come down here, so you can see LG Philips were the ones who actually made this panel. And the panel, no surprise, came from Korea. This apparently, I'm guessing this entire assembly came from Korea, including the inverter covers, because finally we have Phillips screws down here. Everything else up to this point has been Torx screws, but now we're finally getting into some Phillips screws. So I'm guessing this was done in a different factory and shipped, assembled like this, to Belgium, where they put everything else on top of it. So let's dig a little bit further. Well, here's what the T-Con and the inverter boards look like. So finally we're getting into some no-name capacitors. So the Korean factory just went with whatever they could get. Single wire on either side going out to the inverters. So I'm not sure. I'm guessing there's just one tube, top and bottom, so edge lit, but I'm not sure actually. I've never seen it with only a single wire on either side. There's a ribbon cable connecting the two boards together here. And then up here's the T-Con timing controller board. That's interesting. So they've got, that's a chip that's soldered in on either side here. And there was, the original board had a cutout. And then they dropped that board in and soldered it in place. Almost looks like it's maybe a small power supply with some coils on there, but hard to say. Well, I may actually go so far as to take the panel apart. Not because I'm trying to fix it or anything, but just to show you how many pieces or what one of these looks like on the inside. I've tried to take these apart where I had some bad CCFLs before, and that is beyond my capabilities. I was not able to get it back together, but this one's broken. I don't care if I get it back together. So we'll take it apart for fun. So the TV's so big it's hard to get it all in one frame, well, on the camera stand, the tripod, but so I've got the screen back facing screen side up, and there were 7 screws around the outside edge, and then after that along each side are 3 different tabs that you have to use a screwdriver to kind of pop them loose. And once you get all that, so you can take that frame off. And let's see here. So right here coming over the edge, this is actually the top of the screen down here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 10 little areas where the ribbon comes over and bonds to the actual glass. Okay. So it looks like there's a piece of tape down here holding it on. So I think, let's see if we can get this tape off. There shouldn't be anything else holding this on. There's some circuit boards here. Oh, I've got some ribbon cables down here I need to take off. There we go. So this is the actual panel, and see if I can get the light right. You can kind of make out the crack there. So this is what produces the color on screen, and this is the part that broke. And yes, this is actually glass, even though it's the entire assembly is less than 1/8 of an inch thick. This is 2 thin sheets of glass, and in between the sheets of glass are all the liquid crystals. So this is what produces the image. All this back here is the backlight that shines through this. So let me set this aside. So this part here, so a lot of times if you have backlighting problems, then you've got to carefully take that off, keep it all safe, dig into here to be able to fix the backlighting, and then somehow put it all back together. And that is truly a pain, which is why usually if the problem is the backlighting itself, it's easier to just buy a new TV. So there are clips along the edge here. Some more on the sides. this side loose over here. Go. So now that you've got that part of the frame off, so what you should have here is a bunch of diffusion and polarization layers. And so I think that's just a diffusing layer. So if you see, my hand's a little fuzzy through there, and this is just designed to scatter the light as it passes through there. Below that, this one looks like the polarizing layer. Yeah, I mean there, my hand kind of looks funny, maybe kind of ghosted or something here. And this is designed to ensure that the light is passing, kind of cancels out light that's coming at odd angles to ensure that it's coming straight through the screen. And then below that we have yet another diffusing layer. It's kind of interesting the way they go back and they alternate between diffusing and polarizing layers. And looks like, oh, so here's a thin sheet of acrylic plastic. I'd say it's between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch thick. And again, it's kind of opaque or smoky, so kind of diffuse the light. And oh, there we go. So this one was a full array of Ccfl tubes. I mean, if you see here, we've just got tube after tube going across. And these are basically just really tiny fluorescent bulbs like you'd see in a garage or a kitchen or something like that. Little towers here in the middle to keep that central plastic from sagging and coming down and making contact on these. But oftentimes these will break, or they not necessarily break, but they'll burn out, just like fluorescent lights can burn out in your house. And the problem is you can't get in here easily to replace these, so when one of these dies, you're basically looking at buying a new TV. So yeah, I think that's pretty much, we reached the end of this TV. There's not a whole lot more to dig into here. Had some interesting things in here. I mean, I was definitely pleased and surprised with the quality of the components that Philips used, and also surprised to see that they used Torx screws for the most part in here. So this particular TV had a manufacture date in mid-2005, so it's a decade old, and given the quality of components they used, if it weren't for the physical screen impact, I suspect that this TV would still be operational probably for another 5-10 years, which is rare. I mean, most newer LCD, or I should say LED TVs and LCD TVs have an expected lifespan of about 5 years. They usually die within 5 years. So this one, owing to its quality of construction, lasted longer. So yeah, I hope you enjoy that. The inside look of a 10-year-old Philips LCD TV. Thanks for watching.